Bonjour à tous, merci à ceux qui sont encore là pour ce programme qui était très chargé aujourd'hui. Je suis ravi de vous présenter
So everybody, thank you for staying.
minutes, plutôt 30 pour essayer de partager des questions aussi avec vous.
About 30 minutes now on 45 minutes of questions on
donc Not So Blindness, qui est un projet que je pense que vous connaissez désormais.
on Not So Blindness. I think you already know the project. So okay, today I was very fortunate to be able to present this at MIT, in South Africa, in London, in Potsdam, and not very much in France, but here now. This is global feedback on the whole pathway of this project, which isn't finished yet because, as you'll see, the project's going to be coming out on new platforms soon. So I work at AGAT Films Cie. We're here in the 11th arrondissement of Paris. In fact, exactly here, and just next to this fantastic pizzeria. So there's eight partners here. I deal with digital, and started by producing web documentaries. André Jarek and Bruno Mazik in particular, which I developed a lot on virtual reality, and they would do as well. They would do typewriter and working on animation like produced for Arte, and we developed a number of transmedia projects. And there's a U-Boot market for Radiomans, and with these projects what we want to do is to look at very different technology to be able to tell a story, and I'm very interested in storytelling and design. Now this is data visualization of a whole season of Peaky Blinders. We did this Nigel Evan Dennis, who worked on Game of Thrones and True Detective, and Typewriter as well, that's produced with Arte. So these are projects which have led us to produce Not So Blindness. Now, for me, it's something which is in the continuity of what I've been doing for the past dozen years or so. It's not something that just sprang up overnight. So it's a project that started in 2014. It's 2.5 years to come about, and the question is, how does it feel to be blind? And when you ask this question, you get faced with your own relationship to handicap, to blindness, and who hasn't closed your eyes to try and understand what it's like to live in this world without sight, without sight. And you think it's something that's very easy to simulate, but what you can't imagine is all the impact of this illness on a relationship with the world and to other people. And this is what we discovered with John Hull, who was a professor of theology in Birmingham, who went blind at the age of 45, and who recorded a diary of his 5 first years of slipping over into blindness. And this project comes from John and Peter Middleton and James Spinney meeting together with John, and they were at film school, and for their graduation film they looked at the book Touching the Rock, which has got a preface from Oliver Sacks. And at the end of the book there's a note saying the book was extracted from cassettes by John Hull. And so they sent a letter to John Hull, and then they got back the cassette with all the diaries. And so they worked on a short film that was selected in Sundance, and it was a short film which was there to prototype their feature. And what's very interesting in this project, and that can explain its success, is that the whole of the channel
été
All writing
itératif
was
et ce
iterative,
long métrage a aussi été d'une certaine manière prototypé au
and it
travers
was
d'un court métrage
prototyped through
qui
the
a
short film,
qui a eu un très grand succès.
which had a big success.
Ils ont gagné un Digital Emmy Award et ça a évidemment aidé
And this, of course,
pour le financement
helped
du projet.
in
Donc
financing
nous,
the
on rentre
project.
dans ce projet au moment
Now,
où
so we
Arte
joined
s'intéresse
in
en
when
fait
Arte
à la
was beginning to look
coproduction
at
de ce long métrage
co-producing
et
this feature,
on rencontre
and Peter and
Peter
James,
le producteur,
the
Mike
producer,
d'Archer's Mark,
Mike Grade,
coproduire le long métrage de
to produce Notes
Arte
on
avec qui on
Blindness.
travaille fréquemment,
Arte that we've often worked with,
connaissait notre capacité à
your
imaginer
capacity
des
to
accompagnements
imagine
des œuvres
the
numériques
support for digital
pour
works
accompagner cet univers.
for
Et c'est
this,
comme ça que
and this is how
à
we
coproduire le long
co-produced the
métrage
feature film with my
Colinart
partner
et à
David
produire,
Courgeau.
et à concevoir
We produced and designed the VR
et Archer's Mark.
aspect
Donc moi je vais principalement vous parler
with
aujourd'hui de la VR.
Archer's Mark and audio gaming. Now,
Le cœur de l'équipe
the
créative, c'est
heart of the creative team is Peter and
sur la
James
création
for the creation of the narrative
et
world,
Amaury d'Audio Gaming et moi-même
and
sur
Alani
la direction de création. Donc,
and
quand on
Arnaud
démarre
as well
ce projet,
with me.
on
Now,
découvre
when you
l'univers
start
de
up a
John
project,
Hull,
you
on
understand
lit
John Hull's
à la
world,
fois le livre Touching the
his
Rock,
book
on lit
Touching the Rock,
l'intégralité des transcriptions de
and
ses cassettes. Et
the transcription
ce
of
qui
the
nous frappe
cassettes.
avant
And what really
tout,
struck us was
c'est qu'en fait c'est avant tout
the fact
une
that
histoire
above all
audio
it was
et
an
du
audio
matériel audio.
story.
Et pour ma part,
And
je suis un grand fan
I'm
de
a big
podcast
fan
Serial.
of
Et
Serial, the
à ce
podcast,
moment-là, on
and
propose à Peter et James en fait
so
d'imaginer
Peter
un
and James, we
podcast
asked them to
interactif.
imagine an interactive
C'était
podcast,
vraiment la toute première
which was
version
really
du
the very
projet.
first
Contrat de
project
développement
of
avec Arte
the
mentionne un
the very
podcast
first part of the
interactif de
project.
90 minutes,
So I have 90
dans
minutes
lequel il
of
n'y a absolument pas
broadcast
d'image.
podcast without any images
Et
at
on
all,
démarre ce projet
and we start the
là-dessus
project on this
partant du constat que dans
using
l'univers
the
des
idea
productions
that
interactives, il y a très peu de choses
there are very few
principalement basées
things
sur
done
sur le son.
based on sound
Et donc on imagine une expérience
in the virtual
interactive
world.
où on va,
So an interactive experience where
revivre
you
des
can
moments de
relive
mémoire de
moments
John
of
Hull avec un son
John Hull's
spatialisé,
memory with
où il
spatialized
vous
sound,
demanderait de fermer les yeux et on
where
utilise
you
du son,
close your eyes and
360.
use 360
Audio
sound.
gaming avec qui on a
Audio
collaboré
gaming that we
sur
worked with
Meilleur,
on
nous avons
typewriter,
ces qualités à la fois
they
de
showed us their qualities
start-up au niveau audio, mais aussi
as a
studio,
startup,
et on part,
as an audio,
donc,
as a
nous avec Nilo,
a
on
video
voit
company as
ce
well.
concept et très
And so
vite,
this is something
on
that
partage cela avec Amaury
that
Dapian, qui
we
est et on se
shared
met à
with Amaury
travailler
and his
sur,
teams, and
des
we
prototypes,
worked on
donc
prototypes
de podcasts interactifs.
of interactive podcasts.
Et quand on commence les
And
premiers
when we
tests,
started with the first
on
tests,
fait face à la difficulté suivante,
we
qui
had
est
the
que,
difficulty
on part sur un projet sur lequel il n'y a pas
that
d'image
we're
sur mobile,
working on something which has
et
got no
la plupart des
pictures
utilisateurs
on mobile,
ont leur attention
and most of the
captée
people listening are
par
going to
cet
be
écran,
seized by the
une
screen,
image ou non.
whether there's an
Et on
image
se
or
rend
not.
compte
Most
que,
people
les
just they're
utilisateurs
still
voyants,
the
qui sont
the screen, and then
notre cible, puisque la mission de John Hull était justement
John
la
Hull
transmission de
wanted
ce
to
témoignage.
transmit
Ces
what
utilisateurs ont
he
énormément
felt,
de mal
and these
à se
people
focaliser
find it very
sur
difficult to
cette
focus
expérience, puisqu'il
on
n'y a
this
pas
experience
d'image,
because they haven't got an image,
et d'autant plus avec
and particularly
téléphone,
with
téléphone dans la main qui
téléphone
faudrait bouger
that
autour de soi.
you need to move around yourself.
Donc on est confronté à la nécessité,
And so there's a
l'impérieuse
need
nécessité de représenter
to
la
represent
cécité de manière
blindness graphically.
Donc, là on se dit
So
comment
we said,
on va,
okay, how
imaginer
are we
une
going to
représentation
imagine
graphique
a graphic representation of emptiness,
que ce soit le vide. Et en fait, on
of the
repart
void?
dans les,
So we went
les
back
cassettes de
to John
Hull, et
Hull's
on trouve
cassettes.
cette phrase
We found this
où il
sentence
explique que le monde
where he says
dans lequel il vit désormais,
the world he exists in
dit être beyond sight, au-delà
is
de la
beyond
vision,
sight.
est un monde qui n'est fait que
It's a
d'actifs.
world
Et il prend comme
that
exemple la
consists
présence
only
de
of
ses enfants
activity,
qui existent
and he
dans
talks
son
about
monde
his children.
si,
His children
les enfants
exist in
jouent,
his
ils font
world.
du bruit.
If they
En
play,
revanche,
they
si
make
ces
a
enfants
noise.
se taisent et n'ont
But if
plus
they
aucune
don't make a noise,
activité
they've
générale
got no
du son,
activity,
c'est comme s'ils disparaissaient, qu'ils n'avaient jamais
it's as if they disappeared and they
Et
never
on se dit à
existed.
partir de là qu'il y a un concept
And so you say, well, there's this
visuel,
visual
en tout cas de
concept
représentation
or
très
representation
fort,
which is
et on
very
part dans
strong,
l'idée que tout ce que l'on va voir sera
and that
généré,
everything you see will,
tout ce qui sera présent à l'écran
everything
sera
present
lié
on the
à
screen will be
l'activité
linked to
sonore.
sounds.
Ensuite, on se confronte.
Then
Donc, en gros, ce que l'on cherche à faire à ce
what we're
moment-là,
looking
c'est
to do
de
there
garder
is to keep
le cœur de notre approche
the
épistemologique, c'est-à-dire de mêler
the mix storytelling and then keep close to the emotion as well. And with what John Hall is saying. So we worked with Arnaud Desjardins as art director for the representation of space, so we can describe the space that John Hall talks about. We've got mood boards as well to give us an idea of what this and looking at the glitches, the vertex effects and these sort of ghost images. We're looking for references as well from the various sightless communities, because they don't see black. I mean, it just recreates a whole load of forms. Your brain recreates a whole load of forms. There's literature. There's Jorge Luis Borges, who talks about blindness. And you've got various mood boards to give a certain tone to the work.
So very quickly we started working on prototypes in order to have an idea of what it could look like. So here, this is one of the very first visual tests we worked on, and this is actually a test which aims at providing a kind of atmosphere, and which is also the basis of our artistic approach. So this was done very simply under Unity and with the particle engine integrated in Unity. And what was at stake here was to create an atmosphere. It was a kind of mood board for us of what we wanted to provide in terms of sensations, because as you know, the end result is very far from this. So in parallel we worked with different artistic directors, such as Fabien Togman, who took over from Fabien Desjardins, because the difficulty we had when we worked on this project, and I think it's always the case, was actually to find teams who have the competence we actually need. So Arnaud Desjardins is an artistic director with a lot of experience, but no experience on mobile. Fabien Togman was coming from the video game background, so he could also anticipate the needs that we had in terms of this interaction. And then we could work also on a kind of gameplay, if so to say, and worked on the directing part. So this is the very first prototype we worked on, with a 3D model reacting to sound. And so you have this young woman walking. I don't know if you hear, but we can hear the heels of this lady, and the shaders of the 3D model are lightened up by her behavior, or depending on her audio behavior. So this is a kind of proof of concept we introduced to the teams or to Arte in order to tell them more about our approach. So we worked on the Unity. So this is the very sexy part developers are using, and as you have different cubes which are actually objects with their own behaviors and tracks, and they are tracked in green. The tracks or the itinerary are displayed in green, and we have a scenery in 3D with its own movements. And we worked on the graphic part with a shader forge, which enables to manage the graphic behaviors of the 3D items of the project. In parallel, we kept on working on iteration process and how we could reinforce the VR. Based on this, we kept on.
I hear the footsteps of people walking past me on the footpath.
So based on this, we kept on working on video prototypes. At that stage, we were still on a project in 360 degrees, so it's a magic window mode with no use of VR headset. There is no 3D. So this is the type of project that we introduced to Tribeca in order new media found. And So this is the prototype we sent to Tribeca, and this is actually running on an iPad and on my mobile phone. So we tried to also go further in the directing part. We worked with another director, artistic director, Beatrix Lartig, who is a more specific touch, and which ends up with this type of artistic direction that you know nowadays, which was impacted by a lot of technical constraints. And one of the reasons why we resorted to so many directors, artistic directors, was that this project had no image initially, so we had to redefine our projects as we were progressing in the production. So we talked about the visual part, but there is also the staging part, because we had to address the idea or the concept of what we wanted to give in terms of instructions to the teams. So we resorted to a lot of drawings, as if we were sketching a drawing of a stage, of a theater stage. So this is the kind of universe we would imagine around the scenery, with a park, a bench on which the general is sitting with his children playing, the lives surrounding them, and the cars passing by. And we had also different views in order to enable us to identify how we could give display the space of the sound. And Notes on Blindness is an interactive experience, so we ask ourselves the same questions as the ones working on videoing. For those who know Lynchmin, you have the 3 C's: camera, characters, and control. So the control part was quite easy, because we were using a tablet. So camera was played a key role, because we had to know at which height we would position the camera for the park scene. There were a lot of during a lot of months we were not happy with the result, because it was, and we realized at the end of the day that the camera was too high and John Hall was supposed to be sitting on the bench. And once we had the camera at a more realistic height of a person sitting on the bench, then the whole scene made more sense. So this whole work was done based on the 360-degree experience, and we kept on working on the prototyping this experience.
Just a few days before you were born. How could this happen to me? What right had they? Who could ask me to go through this? A thunder sets for him the dimensions of the outdoor space within which he is situated. And thunder, by adding this dimension of distance.
So as you can see, at that stage, this is an experience on tablets, so we're using gameplays which are quite standard for video games, such as the one where you blow on the microphone to create wind, which was one of the interactions that we were imagining, and which you can find in the VR work, but by using the controller. So at that stage of the project, this was actually at the end of 2014, and yes, end of 2014, and we had a film and an app, and the film was more of a visual display, and the app was more an experience. The app had more to do with feeling, sensation, and there was a different point of view. It's the third person in the film and the first person position in the virtual reality experience with the app. And then we received the fund, the New Media Fund grant, and this enabled us to go to New York to meet with stakeholders of entertainment industry and interactive industry, such as Google, New York Times, and PBS. And everyone told us, well, this project has to be done in VR. And we were very reluctant to do so, because we actually tested Oculus, Carbon, and we are actually co-producing with Arte, and we were really eager to have this accessibility to our work, and we thought that VR was not the best way to reach out to a large audience. So we can see with the prototype that the fact that you're not immersed within that space because you have a screen in front of you is actually upsetting your the concentration or the focus of the viewer. And thanks to the support of the CNC, we could prototype a first version on cardboard. And this was actually a revelation to us, because actually cardboard was acting as a mask and unable to focus the attention of the viewer on our experiment. And we could actually, by doing so, solving our problem, which was a graphic problem too, because it was very dark, when the users had to adjust the light level in a continuous way, and therefore this VR headset is acting as a mask and enables to focus the attention of the user. And then this was a turn in our project, and we ended up having a fully VR project. So then we started dealing with the distribution constraints, and these were related to aiming at using it on the mobile. And Arte, who is a TV channel, was targeting the usage of these viewers, who are mobile owners rather than Oculus Rift or Sony PlayStation owners. So notes on the blindness is there is no room scale, but what is very good in this GIF is that it allows us to understand the difference and the agency, the type of interaction in virtual reality. And notes on blindness is from the early stages on interaction, so it's not a 360 video. So what we can keep in mind about the production of this project, it's the iteration of the way this was produced, because the first part was an audio podcast, the second iteration was a 360-degree application in magic window mode, and the third iteration is a VR application for mobile phones. And then finally what we are currently developing with video gaming teams, a VR which can be used on mobile and PCs. And this is an iteration that we have also in the writing, at the writing level. So we always start with the narrative script and we add an interactive layer. And initially we had 20 scenes on which we tried to imagine interactions, and we kept only the ones which allowed us to have a progression in the narrative and which provided an added value in an interactive dimension. Then we worked on art direction, artistic direction. We made prototypes, we tested, and then we tested until we were satisfactory, or until we had no longer any money left. So among the stakes of that stage were finding the right balance between the immersion and the way to guide the users, because there is nothing less immersive as having an instruction on the screen saying do this, do that. So this prototype work enabled us to test the way the users would understand the features, the functionality, and the way the project works. So what we can keep in mind regarding the production of this project is how important communication is. Very often we have large teams working, usually 20 people. If you have think about the sound designers, production, and all the different member teams involved, so there is the communication gets lost in a way after a while. So this is something we see when we work on this project. So what is at stake is the communication and the understanding of the stakes and references by the whole team. So what is important when you work also remotely, that you need to use all the references you might have in mind: literature, cartoons, video games, films, even the worst films you can think of, because there was a reference we used for there was a daredevil fighting part, which is probably not the best Marvel movie ever, but what was at stake was to find the same terminology in order to communicate with everyone, both with the art directors, the producers of the film, and also the programmers. So the programmers is a specific case in itself, especially when you come, as I come from the broadcasting world or the TV world. So after several years, especially in France, the video game industries or the cinema industry are coming closer, but we are improving this. But for producers who are coming from the TV background, you have to work with programmers when you make a film. So this is a list that we drafted in order to optimize our relationship with the programmers, because we wanted to be very clear in our requests. We don't want to overestimate. It's not because you feel like it's only about changing the color of a character that it won't mean a whole day work behind. So it's important for the art directors, producers to know the rationale of the production, what it means, technically speaking. So, and if you have the ability to do a bit of code sessions or to learn about how they can program, this is something interesting. So this is what we did as well. And at that point in the project, it was still a project, so it moved still from a 360-degree project to a VR project. So what VR brought us? So what it brought was that. And even the daughter of Andrés Jarrac you saw earlier is testing the Jurassic Park experience, and what makes her scream is the presence and the fact that she feels connected or in interaction with a virtual world. And this is truly this element which made us translate this narrative, this testimony of John Hull in another dimension. So this presence is often defined by technical elements. I'm not going to come back on this tracking, latency, optics, but according to me and also according to Amaury Laburte, what defines presence is the storytelling notion. Amaury imagined this theory, which is the onion theory, which means that there are different layers of immersion, and what is at the heart of immersion is this idea of what if. What if I was blind? What if I was on a boat? What if I was a bird? And this is what is actually the narrative link between all the experiences in virtual reality. So what is at the heart of the immersion is the story. Then you have the emotional elements which are related to the personal story of John Hull, interaction aspects, the fact that it's an interactive project, and also what we call a gradual construction, which is a kind of curve of difficulty which is increasing as we progress in the interaction stages, and also more flexibility in the real-time rendering, and also the sound design, the sound management in real time, because in Notes on Blindness we are working on binaural rendering, and in real time we are making this specialization evolve as depending on where you are in this scenery. So through this project, and I'm not the only one who realized this, all the creators realized how the sound was important, how important was the sound. It was as if we were rediscovering the importance of the sound. And when you are TV producers, music and sound are the last budget lines, and this is where usually we're making savings, and it's not something which is nice to hear from the sound directors, but this is the reality. And by rediscovering actually this aspect, I realized that we were not the only one realizing this.
I think that movies depend so much on rhythm. They are so close to music, a movie is. Closer to music than a drama of the theater. That if the sound and the rhythm of the sound, above all the rhythm, is wrong, no image can save it. Because the rhythm of the sound, I believe sound is the first human sense for the theater, not the eye. I think the first theater was a story told by a storyteller, and it's the voice, and the voice determines it, and the rhythm of the voice determines the images in some way. It's not only what you say, but the rhythm and speed of all the voices in a scene. So I often, when I direct, turn my back on the scene.
So Orson Welles would probably be a very good director for virtual reality, because what we realized was that this is how we worked on Notes on Blindness, because even the film is based on those voice testimonies, on those recordings, and we always worked on the staging based on the sound. And the other element we applied to this project was what we call the rubber band storytelling. We know point A, point B, so that's to say the beginning and the end of the experiment. And in between we are going to track the time of this experience by tracking the behaviors of the user. So for example, a user who is going to look a lot around in 360 degrees, we will kind of delay the voice, because we feel like he's really enjoying this immersion, and we have our users looking straight ahead. So then we are going to display the voiceover more quickly in order to keep the attention of the user. So at the end of the day, after starting on a 90-minute podcast project, we ended up with 6 chapters of virtual reality of 25 minutes. And for a very long, we said 10 minutes because the festivals told us it was too long, but it's actually 25 minutes. I think that as you know the project, I'm not going to show you the teaser, but I'm going to move on to the next topic, or next question. So, Notes on Blindness is one of the most applauded work, VR work, and what we learned at the end of this experience on Notes on Blindness, it's how we can distribute such a VR content. So, initially, we were helped by a more traditional, conventional format, which was the feature film, and which was released on the 30th of June in the UK. And we aligned this with the project to the feature film, so this was a way to communicate for both at the same time. It was also a way to give a broader or larger distribution to the brand, and especially to an audience who usually don't have access to this type of work. So I didn't show you the teaser of the virtual reality, but I'm going to show you the feature film teaser, who is based on the original recordings of John Howe.
This is cassette 1, track 1, Notes on Blindness. July the 5th, 1984. What happens to the brain when optic stimulation ceases? I am concerned to understand blindness. The pictures in the gallery of my mind have dimmed somewhat, so I could no longer remember easily what my wife looked like, or what my daughter Imogen looked like.
I began to be terribly afraid that I would lose you.
Everything was drifting away. How could this happen to me? Who had the right to deprive me of the sight of my children at Christmas time? That there's been a strange kind of change in the state of my brain. There is something so totally purging about blindness that one either is destroyed or renewed. I think I am beginning to understand what it's like to be blind.
So when we started producing this VR project, or rather when we started developing the VR prototypes, the film was already in the process of being produced. So it was a true challenge for our teams to keep the pace of the film production and also to try and reach a level of experience and quality which was as high as the one of the film, which is really magnificent. There was the 3 BAFTA nominations. So as regards VR, we were mainly working on the store platforms and always with this rationale of giving access to it. So we developed this project without any VR headsets, so for Google Play and App Store, and we also worked on the mobile, which was the most performant ones. So we also developed chapters which were the most linear ones for RT 360 and New York Times VR. It was the first scenery in the park is also available on the New York Times VR application. And so on the 30th of June, when this film was released, Notes on Blindness was on home of Oculus Store, and luckily, because let's be quite clear, it was not something we had foreseen. It was during the sale, so at that time there is very little content in the store, and as Notes on Blindness was free because we didn't want to have any paywall on that project, the first week we had a number of uploads downloads which were quite huge. I cannot communicate on the figures, but I can tell you that the downloading figures are the results equivalent to the result of a very good mobile application or game, so which is very exceptional for this type of platform. So what supported us was that we were supported on the marketing side by the Oculus teams, both in terms of the visibility on the store as for the different events. And the other work done, which was also very important, it was the British distributor's work, cœur, who released this film in the theaters, and there was a tour organized for the VR part to support the feature film in 25 cities where you had the premiere of the film, and it's also enabled to have a lot of press coverage and to give access to VR to people who were not equipped with this technology. So currently the project is a virtual reality feature film and short film, which is also supporting the release in France, and this is where we see the story of John Hall from the point of view of his daughter, and it's about 5 to 6 minutes long. And at the end of this 2.5-year process, what do we keep in mind? Well, first of all, the inability to know exactly what the virtual reality is going to become in the future, but the assurance that we should no longer compare virtual reality with 3D, because very often people say virtual reality is the same thing as 3D films, it didn't change anything, it was a failure, but the only thing we can that can be compared between the two is the technical industries. 3D tremendously unable to develop the business of the technical industries. But if we think in terms of narratives, the virtual reality is the equivalent of the end of the cinema. It's similar to the first iPhone being released. So this is when we do not yet know what this will lead to, which now leads us to make encounters of new people. You have access to different services, to display contents, cultural contents, to read. So the app is also a format for cultural projects.
Like most of the speakers told you today, virtual reality is going to change the way we relate to the outside world. From the entertainment standpoint, virtual reality is just one more brick, but larger, with mixed reality, augmented reality, immersive theater. And I think all creators, all producers who now take an interest in virtual reality are advocating for and pushing for immersive entertainment, like a larger a larger universe feel, because when you like a story, when you consume a story, you want to keep being in it. And this is why you're almost grieving for the end of a show like Mad Men after 7 seasons. You want to stay in that universe. So that's one of the ways we could expand that. One of the questions that remains is accessibility to these contents. We're seeing that it's still quite a challenge. I think you've seen the YouTube 180 announcement. Basically, this is a YouTube project for 180-degree immersion, because they realized that actually most users do not have a 360-degree behavior, basically because our field of vision is frontal, you know. Furthermore, in terms of virtual reality, you have a lot of data to process in terms of production, in terms of streaming also, and also the frequent criticism for 360 degrees is the quality of the picture. So when you divide that by 2, you can have more quality for, you know, streaming purposes, and you can have that better an immersion experience. And the VR headsets and the VR spaces are places where you can try those on and be guided through it, so have a very good experience before maybe eventually bringing one home. Currently, you can find more than 120 funding sources, a lot of French financing, a lot of French-speaking financing, so to speak, Belgium, Luxembourg. One of the reasons is that since a lot of it is public, you know, they allow for some risk-taking. In the US, the ones which have raised money have actually had to produce content to raise funding, basically. But in Europe and in France especially, we've been fortunate enough that we've been able to go the other way around, is to raise money to then create, you know, to push a new mode of creation. We've talked about inner space, audio gaming, so different outfits from France, and France has been identified as a great breeding ground, so to speak. So we are hoping that this is not going to be like the Minitel, meaning that we have to create this into an actual industry with a lot of talents, a lot of skills. So that's it.
Alors, est-ce qu'on m'a remis le micro? Oui. Est-ce que vous avez une question dans la salle?
Do we have questions in the room?
Ici. Bonjour. Non, c'est bon. Bonjour, j'aurais souhaité savoir en fait s'il y avait une forme de cross-collatéralisation entre les recettes sur les différents supports.
Do you have so-called cross-collateralization on the revenues? Meaning that I understand that the funding was differentiated, but are you sharing the resources? Actually, the income, the revenue, the sources of revenues have been differentiated because we had different contracts in terms of intellectual property right also. So we differentiated the income because we at AGAT Film, we actually were more involved, almost exclusively involved in the VR project, so we get our income from the VR project. The thing is, the objectives were quite different in both projects, but the general interest was the same. So our negotiations revolved around how could we promote the overall project, you know, as a whole. Basically, we were minority co-producer of the film. film, and the film producers were minority co-producer of the VR project. So it wasn't simple, but it was done in agreement. And sometimes we decided to sacrifice the visibility of one part of the project to the benefit of the other when we thought that it would be in the general interest of the project. So we are still the producer of the version that is going to be released on Oculus Rift. We want to release one on HTC Vive and on PS4 as well. So that we've invested with Ex Nihilo, with audio gaming as well, and also financial backing from Arte, the French-German channel. One last question, maybe? I didn't catch the beginning of your presentation, so maybe you talked about it, but I'd like to know how much time you spent on development, and if it's not too indiscreet, how much it costed. It took us a total of 2.5 years. At the beginning, we had to be quite fast, because again, the film production was agreed to, and they had been given the go-ahead. But for the prototyping, the VR prototyping, it was 6 to 8 months. But I think 4 months in, we already had a prototype, and 6 months in, we had a 360-degree prototype. And again, after 8 months, we had the final prototype, so to speak, VR prototype. And we financed the development with the funding from Arte, 25,000 euros, and CNC New Media, about 50,000 euros. Thank you very much.